I don't reckon we should have the means test today. I'd just let the people vent. It's a hot start.
Oh,
Gee whiz.
I said I'd provide a shoulder, but I've just
Wow.
it's been overwhelming.
There's a little bit of negativity.
Just a little bit. Well,
leaking
when you
through.
get three massive clubs have the round that they had,
It's awesome.
Carlton, Collingwood and Essendon, it's the recipe for a disaster on
That's
Monday.
perfect.
Good morning. Yes.
Morning, G.
Oh, the King's Gambit starts us off, Kingy.
Well, what's the best place to be in footy?
Behind at three-quarter time.
2 goals down, 3/4.
I reckon that's the sweet spot. I said on crunch time maybe 3 goals, but somewhere between 2 and 3 goals
Three's
at the
too
moment.
many. Three's too many.
Well, apparently not.
Three's
That's a no lead is safe era.
1 goal, maybe 1.5 goals. Sweet spot.
Just enough where you can roll the magnet dice, aka John Longmire, with a nothing to lose. Momentum. It's momentum madness. Is it that hard to coach against momentum in the modern game?
Well, if just the numbers don't lie. So up until round 18 this year, if you led at 3/4 time, you won 88% of games. 88% of games, up to round 19, sorry. So the last 4 rounds, it is down to 63%. So 6 out of 10 win rather than 9 out of 10. That's a big shift. And then you have to look at the weekend. So go through Friday night and Saturday's games. The Swans were trailing by 21 points.
27 early in the fourth, as it
Yeah.
was. They got the first goal.
Okay.
Collingwood.
All right, stand corrected.
But yes.
North Melbourne led by 13 and 3/4 time. Brisbane led by 8. Fremantle led by 4. Melbourne led by 3. And the Gold Coast Suns, I think, led by 4 points. Was the falsest lead you've ever seen. So
Well, Essendon got in front in the last quarter and were
Yes.
then overpowered, as we know.
They were exactly right. So I mean, that was a lot closer that game. Pretty most of the night,
Yep.
really. I don't think it's straight outside of 12 points either way. But yeah, I think it's just the psychology of footy, isn't it? We've got to go, we've got to score
Yeah.
versus how do we hang on? How do we stop?
Particularly when the team charging is the home team at a proper home venue and the crowd can sniff it. The crowd can smell it. They get on board. Next thing you know, the commentary's all about it too. And I don't know, maybe just a bit of panic starts to set in. I mean, for it even to happen to Collingwood, and I know there's an asterisk with some of the decisions, but this all goes into it with teams who get run over. Things go against you.
We'll talk about those decisions later on.
How
But
about the tumbleweeds?
It's the psychology of footy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't talk enough about the grey matter. How you're processing what's happening, the clarity of some players versus others. And we showed some vision of Isaac Heaney last night, being able to say, okay, I can see what's happening here. We could win this stoppage. What if I drag Crisp to the goal square and make him play fullback for a bit? Would Moore come with him? No, he's probably not going to come. So all those things going on in real time, being able to take yourself outside of your little role, whether it be big, be small, and have a look at the overarching game. Say, okay, we need a goal. How can I get us a goal? I think it's an asset that not many players have.
Yep. Now, the King's Gambit's your domain, but I did note this morning that the AFL's frozen ticket prices for the finals again this year. And no wonder they have, because there won't be any at the MCG in the first week if we have a ladder like this.
The frozen finals at the MCG.
Unbelievable, isn't it? And it's never happened before.
Why do you worry about this so much?
I'm not worried about it. It's just not. It's never happened before. Don't you find it an extraordinary situation? I mean, outside of COVID, if the ladder were to stay like this or close to this, which it won't, mind you, but there could be all sorts of scenarios that still make it possible.
Yeah.
There might only be a grand final in Melbourne or a semi-final alongside it. So Sydney and Geelong would be at the SCG, Port and Giants would be at the Adelaide Oval, Brisbane Hawthorn would be at the Gabba, and Fremantle and the Dogs would be at Optus as it stands.
I think Geelong will pick up the 4% required over the next 2 rounds to go past the 2 teams in front of them.
Yeah, well, Jack's text in, are the Cats getting enough credit? We're going to circle back to Geelong in a moment. This is an incredible football club, Jack says, who just keep backing up time and time again. And then he's just written here one word, midfield. So we'll get to Geelong in a moment. The pressure index. Who sits front and centre with the pressure index?
Well, it has to be Fremantle. And I know that people say, oh, you bash Fremantle, but the likelihood now that they could miss the 8 is alarming. And everyone said, oh, they're on this trajectory. They're a top 4 team. They got this midfield to die for, best clearance team in the competition. You know, Tracy's taken all before them. Ford have said, I know he wasn't there on the weekend. Their back line, their back 6 are so good. I know they're without Alex Pearce and they were without Josh Tracy on the weekend, and obviously without Sean Darcy, the ruckman, but they've had to do that from time to time throughout the course of the year anyway. It is alarming and amazing that they could miss the 8. I don't know where you sit on this, Sammy, but I watched this game super closely because I was fascinated to see what Chris Scott would do against Fremantle and how he would pick them apart, because this is what the best coaches do. And I don't think the gap between the great coaches and the rest is significant enough. I think what Chris Scott does in game, he should be getting double what some other coaches get.
Yeah.
His ability to free up effectively Jeremy Cameron, to free up Tom Stewart.
How do you free up Jeremy Cameron?
Well, mate, I show vision every week. I could show half an hour of vision.
He should keep you awake all week as the opposition coach.
I would love to do a half-hour special on Jeremy Cameron for the season and just show how he does what he does and how opposition clubs are never ready for him to do it.
So you said this was the biggest matchup of the weekend to get right going in.
Can't get him wrong.
It was Luke Ryan.
It was Chapman. He had the go with run with roll, and they moved him to a wing. They moved him around. So Chris just keeps moving them around a little bit to see what you'll do. So if you want to use your halfback flanker on a wing, well, that's all right. Up he comes. Who are you going to put at halfback? So he just probes the other coach's box. Okay, where's he playing now? Well, see, now he's effectively on ball. Now he's at a stoppage at the halfback flank. Are we going all the way with him or are we holding? Well, if we go all the way with him, he's going to beat us back to goal. I will hold off him. And then he just slips through. I mean, it was Luke Ryan on occasion. It's very difficult to show the vision that answers all discussion pieces. But the bottom line was coaching freed up Cameron. In a 10-9 game, the ability for Geelong to get what they wanted for longer periods was the difference. So Dangerfield does what he does at clearance. Yep, hard to stop, understand that. But the amount of times he was either by himself or half guarded, not arm across, not going to let Dangerfield get this clearance, was like, oh no, we back our boys. Well, you back them, and you get smacked between the eyes. So I just think that this coaching of Geelong ripped the game from the Fremantle Dockers, and it's left them now, in my opinion, with a lot of work to do.
So they're half a game in. To answer your question, to come back to the Dockers, they're half a game inside the 8 in 6. Now that run home is the Giants away into Port Adelaide at home. So it's a tougher pair of games to finish as you can find across the competition.
But they might have to win both.
They might have to. And what I found was in 10 at quarter time, like they're down 4-2 to 2-1. They've been out-tackled in the first half an hour by Geelong 26-8. Now that's a basic measurement, but it does speak to desire and intent and to want, doesn't it? 26-8. They were out-tackled.
Yeah. I'm not massive on tackle number. I get your point. 8 tackles is ridiculous.
8?
But some games are not tackle games, are they? Some games are...
Well, it was because the Cats laid 26 of them.
Yeah, okay. All right. But some games, one team can play with control and it's very difficult to tackle. You can't tackle teams that mark the ball. So there's a difference of philosophy in some games. So I'm not rusted on the tackle numbers, but when you come out of the blocks and kick the first 4 goals, you say, well, something's off here. Something's not right. And again, the thing that really alarms me is the players that are involved. So Brian Myers is another player that fascinates me for Geelong. They've just got these players that if you get the matchups wrong on those guys or your approach to that matchup, they have a not a happy knack. They have an absolute ability to getting it on the scoreboard. And there's a couple of times where Clark just lets Myers go, and you think, what are you doing? Like, is this the plan? Is it? So it's hard for us outside looking in. We're skimming over 18 clubs, right? So we don't profess to be 100% knowledgeable about every aspect of your club, right? So we're trying to do this in real time on the weekend. So all we can judge is what we see. So why would you allow Myers to go free to a stoppage or to the back of a stoppage or to create? And it's not Freo bashing. It's not. It's every club has done this at one point or another through the course of the year. And I feel like they're almost not ready for the Jeremy Cameron role. It's amazing how often it happens.
Does he just not blow them up, though? He's a fitness freak, though, Jeremy Cameron. Up and back, up and...
The gap
does he
between
blow them
players'
up?
fitness is not that big. It's not,
he's a fair athlete, Jeremy Cameron, isn't he?
Do you think that he's
I think he's a better runner and a better worker than the two defenders that you mentioned for Fremantle there.
Then Chapman.
And Ryan.
Oh, Ryan's a different player. Ryan had a different approach. He held, but he's beat him the last couple of times. So it's not always about having the track meet, but the gap between Chapman and Cameron wouldn't be significant.
Phil, and Geelong, by the way, we will feature a little bit later on in the means test as well, but Phil's text in, 14 times in 18 seasons Geelong to qualify top four. Even without equalisation, that is massive. With a handicap competition, it's ridiculous. Thank you, Geelong Football Club, from good to great, just like Frank Costa wanted. The Sleepers, they're up into fourth. They're up into fourth, Geelong, quietly almost, which is amazing.
Well, if they were to win it, right, would it be
one of the great flags?
Would it be one of the great coaching performances, given this group? This group's, it's not the best talent that we see out there.
They lost 6 of 7 mid-season. 6 of 7. It's about a run as any so-called contender has endured, and here they are. But thanks to Jason Newcastle who texted in during the news, because you highlighted this, King, and a lot of us saw it in-game in the moment, and Jace is saying here, huge kudos has to go to Ben King. Literally a minute prior to taking that mark, Ben King pulled Mac Andrew away from a scuffle to settle him down and get him to focus on the ball. Great leadership and something I haven't seen much from Ben King.
Spot on. You're looking for little signs of growth with the Suns, and their leadership's always been a little bit of a question. Who actually is taking control? Who is demanding higher stands? Everyone talks about Tuke Miller and those sorts of things, but and Matt Rao to a point. Do they talk about Anderson that way? Probably not. Maybe they should. But I hadn't seen Ben King go outside of himself to look after another player ever.
Yep.
He's been focused on his role, which is fine. A lot of players are like that. But to see him, because Mac was getting distracted. There was a scuffle went on between Ben Long and Kelly behind the ball, and they threw it. Long got angry and threw him to ground. It was lucky not to be a free kick. It was right in front of the umpire with a minute to go on the clock. 5 seconds later, Mac just wants to get involved. Yeah. He's looking to punch someone. He just wants to be physical and to inject himself into the game. Gets involved. Ben King walks over, grabs him and says, "Hey, mate, we just need you. We need you." You can see him pleading with him to get his head back in the game. Next opportunity, bang. It was unreal. And I just thought, well done to Ben King for doing that. It made me think, what if they'd have played Mac Andrew forward for the year? What if he had spent the whole year as a forward?
He's a natural, isn't he?
Well, I don't know. He's just such a talent. He's just aerially, he's so superior to most defensive players in the competition. I mean, they've tried to get Lukosius to be that player. They've tried to get Walter, who's still very, very young, to be that player. They've tried to have Sam Day be that player. I wonder if it was just Mac Andrew all along. 7 goals in 2 weeks. He makes that forward line look different. And I think that Ben King runs off his enthusiasm for the game and his preparedness to compete. And at any point on the weekend when they could trap Nick Cox in a one-on-one in that first half, they made him look second rate.
Yep.
So that was the beauty of it. The difference between having one bona fide target and 2.
4 goals, 5 marks, and the 13 disposals for Mac Andrew in the forward 50. They started all that in the game against West Coast over there. So the Monday means test, we turn our mind to the big issue, Kingy. Now, last week our big issue sat around Essendon under the phrasing of, well, who actually are Essendon? But this week, I mean, it's probably more pertinent to ask, what on earth was that from Essendon at the weekend is our big issue.
So can we balance the discussion? I think this version of Essendon right now is a lot better than where they've been in the last 2 to 3 years.
Okay, because a lot of Essendon supporters would argue, and have already this morning argued against that.
And that everyone's got their opinion on what they see. We can all see the same thing and have a different view on it.
Why do you say that so categorically?
Because I think they're better between the arcs. They've got some problems inside the arcs at both ends, but I think that the coach can, given some more time, I think we'll fix that. So I think that their midfield product's pretty good. There's some players that need to refine the way they defend, and that includes the top of the tree. That includes Ben Mackay. It means probably another pre-season together for those guys to actually address how they are defending as a unit, not individually but as a group. And I think their forward 50 problems have been evident. I mean, Peter Wright's been a stone in their shoe all year. So you see what Caddy's been able to do since he's coming. Another pre-season to Caddy as a first-year player. He's just going to get better and better. So he'll be a better target next year. So he'll correct that forward 50 to a point. It won't be solved next year, but it'll be on the path. So I think that there's a lot to work with this group, but they were assaulted by Matt Rowell on the weekend. And his hunger and thirst for the contested footy was beyond anything that Essendon could match. And I would be showing that to the Essendon midfielders today. This guy's had 20 contested possessions, 9 clearances, simply because he wanted it more. He absolutely was hell-bent on beating all of them, regardless of who it was, if the ball was within 2 to 3 metres. There were times where he stood up in the tackle, shook them off, got the ball out. So that's something you can't walk past. You have to show that. You have to see that. And he may be the toughest player in the competition, Matt Rowell. I don't know. But when you come up against that, you have to address that. There's still a few things to like. I highlighted last night the chase. The chase from Andy McGrath was just a ripper.
Awesome.
You can build off these things. But I understand the frustration with the Essendon supporters because they've been, the ladder told them that they were better than what they actually are for a fair part of this year. The ladder lies. It does lie. And we're seeing some different corrections at different stages. So I don't think they were ever that good. They'd improved defensively for a point of the year, and we thought, you know what, if they can hold that, then they can probably win a final. It's not going to be the case, but I still think they've made some inroads this year. Did you agree with that?
Yeah, but I'm more interested in this year is this year, and what do they do come October and November? So they had the big preseason last year. The penny is said to have dropped. They all got fit. A lot of them went to the US. They had the pretty significant top-up trade period, if you like. Mackay, Gresham, Goldstein. Xavier Dersma comes in, who's unfortunately now hurt. But the decisions they make around list, where the improvement comes from in the off-season, a lot is made of Cox, Reid and Perkins. How do they get Peter Wright back? What do they do with Dyson Heppel? So where does the improvement come from? What happens next I'm more interested in from an Essendon perspective.
Yeah, I think you've got to be ruthless with some of their list calls. They may have to trade Cox. They may have to trade Reid. He just doesn't play for them. It just doesn't work. For whatever reason, it just hasn't worked at Essendon. Whilst they got some currency, it might be a good time for that purge. Is Kelly really the answer? What does he bring to this team? Does he intercept the ball? Does he help you move the footy? Can he get a job done one-on-one? I think he's a bit of a player without a position, but they fall in love with these guys. Menzies doesn't do enough in game. They've taken a long time to give Brian an opportunity in the ruck. He's been pretty good the last couple of weeks, but why is it taking this long to give this guy an opportunity? You're up and down from Stringer, you're up and down from Langford. The gaps are too big for some of these guys. So, I think that Brad's trying to lift the standards. He's trying to do so many things at this footy club in such a short period of time. And I'm Brad's harshest critic, right? So let's just put that on the table. I think you've just got to give it a bit more time. An Essendon supporter mate of mine said to me, maybe things were that bad at Essendon that this is taking longer than everyone on the outside looking in thought. But I think there's some truth in that. I think the absolute answer is somewhere in the middle. They're not as good as we'd hope they'd be at this stage, but I think they're addressing it the right way.
All right, that's the big issue for this week, and what happens next will be fascinating. The PFI, preliminary final integrity. So if Geelong have done it quietly into the top 4, GWS have not. But like the Cats, they lost 6 of 8 mid-year. Now they are absolutely motoring. So to take 4 points out of the Gabba at any stage is not easy, particularly when you're being crushed at quarter time. So their ability to change the narrative in-game under Adam Kingsley is now something that you can't ignore. And their scoring power is so ferocious, they can take the game away from you quickly. And not many teams can say that this year. They've got some major weapons with some major weapons to return on a personnel front. So the PFI wraps around the GWS Giants, Kingy.
Yeah, it's funny. We've looked a lot at the Giants through different stages this year and wondered, what are they going to get to? What are the Giants? Everyone says we give them enormous raps now, saying, maybe they were building to this point. Maybe they were
part of the plan.
Yeah, part of the plan. Was it really? Wasn't it? I don't have the answer to that. But what I do know is that They got a guy forward of the ball that is just in unbelievable form in Jesse Hogan. 8 targets again on the weekend, 3 contested marks. And what he allows to happen around him, I think, is a credit to the coaching of this forward group. So this forward group, it pretty much has revolved around Hogan and Green, and then the smalls up the field retreating back at speed or charging back at speed. So when you look at what they got out of Cadman and I can never say
Hogan?
his name, Gruszewski.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to, I can never say his name. Being able to get back, MG and Cadman, being able to get back to Andrews and make him have to defend. And if he got it wrong, they hit the scoreboard. To get 4 goals out of those guys is absolutely terrific. And then you still get your 3 out of Hogan. Toby Green was seriously quiet on the weekend. But the thing that really sort of whacked me was they went to Peatling in that second quarter and asked for him to become a clearance beast, and he mauled the Brisbane midfield that have been a more than competent clearance team for 5 years.
9 clearances, 6 inside 50s.
Yeah, but it was the manner in which he did it was evident too. And this is all without a ruckman. They had Lockie Keefe in the ruck. I mean, come on, man. Keefe in the ruck against
done himself a mischief
against the Big O. And the Big O got seduced again into grabbing the ball out of the ruck, and we said, Big O, just tap it to the smalls, man, and get out of the way. But he couldn't help himself. Look, I take my hat off to the coach. I think he's coaching really well. Good to see Kelly back into that team makes such a difference. When Cornelio gets back this week, the kid with the lids lighting it up like you wouldn't believe. They again got the job done on Lockie Neal. So all of their planning, this is what I'm talking about, planning into a game. We talk about Geelong, then we talk about the Giants. What did they demand from their players, and what did they execute? Exactly what they put in bullet point form on Wednesday afternoon in their preview meeting. They tick it all off.
6 in a row now for the Giants, so they're absolutely humming.
There should have been a fair margin at quarter time.
Fremantle and the Western Bulldogs to 11 scoring shots to 1. So that's what I mean. Their ability to change the narrative in game has been unbelievable this year. So those players to come back, Cornelio back soon. Hopefully Kieran Briggs
week, I think,
back soon as well for them as well. So and Riccardi's
Briggsy
the other
was menaged, so he's
Matt bit sore at training, yeah. So hopefully, and then there's Riccardi when it comes to that forward 50 mix you speak of as well.
I wouldn't play Riccardi. I mean, Riccardi probably comes in for our man MG, and is a better version than MG. But I like their speed. I think their speed. You've got to have a weapon that the opposition have real trouble with. And Darcy Jones in that third quarter just turned and went 2 or 3 times, and no one could go with him.
No, that's blinding speed, isn't it?
No,
Don't let him turn. Is the old saying. Don't let him turn and face you.
Put a speedometer in that helmet of his just to see how quick he's going. But even his defensive speed was evident. So no, it's a beauty. And the other thing I wanted to mention was Jack Buckley. He was supposed to be in Paris this weekend. He had 9 intercepts on the weekend and was unreal. So in the end, them saying, not even having to have the conversation, you're not going, right, has a massive impact on their season. If he wasn't there, they don't win on the weekend.
Sacre bleu. Unbelievable.
I don't know what that means. But
Max Grozowski's nickname is Gru. There you go,
Gru.
Kingy, as in the Despicable Me villain, Gru.
I'm just going to go with Gru.
Of course it is. Heard that. Gru.
You can have Gru. I'm going to have the kid with the lid on with Adam.
The debate for New Vision Clinic sits around Carlton with 2 rounds to play this season in the home and away. So my debate or my question to you, Kingy, does the injury alibi stand up this year? And can you possibly mount that argument when they were second at round 20? Were thoroughly outplayed anyway by Hawthorn yesterday. So the debate in and around a side who coulda, shoulda, woulda, haven't. They could have 3 or 4 All-Australians in this side come the end of the season. Injuries have been huge all year, but they were right at the pointy end only 5 minutes ago. So the debate sits with Carlton, how we view them and where it's gone wrong.
I think this debate is hysterical, and I can't understand the logic. If you play players that are below par, that are slightly banged up, which every team has at the moment, then you're going to get a reduced output across the course of 6 to 7 or 8 weeks. players returning from injury are never the same. They're out there in terms of the magnets on the board, and they're out there to play, and then we assess them as 100% right to go, but they're not that. Carlton have had so many injuries this year. They haven't, in the last 6 weeks, been able to be the product that you all think they are. Carlton fans are delusional. They really are. And I know they were sitting second when they were reasonably healthy, but without Chera, Cottrell, Cunningham, De Koning, Fantasia, Martin, Sard, Boyd now, Doherty and Silvani have been out for the year. Guys that are out there, Curno's banged up, but he's still fronting up and playing. You're just not going to be the same product. So what are you expecting from a team that's probably battened down to player 30 on their list already? You don't win with player 30 in your team.
I think part of that fits into the frustration that you speak of, that this isn't their first rodeo when it comes to player availability. In fact, it's been an issue for some time. Now, there's acknowledged there is an element of bad luck always in and around that. But when you have a spate of soft tissues, some of them are training in the middle part of the year as well, then that fits into the Carlton frustration.
Training in the middle of the year?
No, they was tearing their hamstrings in training in the middle part of the year.
Well,
there was a
that's
spate.
An own goal, that. Of course, we talked about that. And you can talk about those things in isolation, but you can't expect to keep up the level of performance that had you sitting second on the table given those circumstances. So I think the criticism of Voss, I heard all of the callers off the top at 9, ridiculous. How can you be blaming Vossi for this? Don't you not agree?
Yeah, I think it's all part of the frustration. I think it all fits into the melting pot of why Carlton supporters are throwing their hands up in the air saying, why does it keep happening?
But be realistic.
Well, okay, Katter just texted in. Let's stop banging on about injury. Every team has had them.
No, they don't.
One soldier down, one soldier stands up.
No, that's a ridiculous comment.
There wouldn't have been many weeks this year, I don't reckon, where it said no change in the Carlton.
The last 6 weeks, they've played the most players in 32 players they've played, the most in the competition. They've only had 13 play all, and some of those players that played all are the ones we're talking about that are going in at 80%. You don't win with player 30, 31, 32 against good sides. You just don't. So you've got to temper your expectation. Is it disappointing that they're here? Absolutely, but I just think this is going to be in hindsight, when you look back, you say, you know what, geez, we were banged up. You know, in 2025, this stage next year, you'll be saying, we learned some tough lessons last year. And you've had some elite performers. Paddy Cripps has been terrific. Curnow, for the bulk of the year, been unbelievable. I still think you need more out of your backline players. Some of your stars down there don't do enough for the team. They're great for themselves, but they don't do enough for the team. You need a better year next year out of McGovern, Sard. Wiedering's got to go absolutely next level.
Yeah.
And I've been hard on that.
But he might be an All-Australian defender this year. And Cripps could be too. And Charlie could be too.
He's not All-Australian defender this year. He's not.
Okay.
If they put him in, then they got it wrong.
Yeah.
Jeremy McGovern's had twice the year that Wiedering's had.
And did you mention Adam Chera? So this is a guy who was leading the Carlton best and fairest for 2/3 of last season, who's just has not had a run at it at all. 5 hamstrings over the last 12 months. So that's what...
So stop picking the guys that are most likely to be injured halfway through the second quarter. You just can't play Jack Martin. You can't play Fantasia. You just have the same discussion each time. Oh, he's unlucky, isn't he? Isn't he unlucky? Oh, he put a body of work. You know what? Just move them on. You've got to move past those guys, and at least get some continuity in the team. They may not be, instead of being an 8 out of 10 player, they might be a 7.5 out of 10 player, but they're there every week. So there's a big difference between having a settled lineup that learn that shared experience of playing together. They learn how each other play. Cohesion's such a key piece now in obtaining success that you just can't have players come in and out of your team.
Well, I'm actually in agreement with Kingy. People saying stop banging on about injuries are the biggest factor in why teams don't play to their best. That's from Cam in Churnside Park. So you can win 12 games and then make injuries the excuse. How did they win 12? This is crap. Hawthorn smashed them. Yeah, Hawthorn did smash them yesterday.
No one's talking about yesterday's game just per se. We're just talking about
the bigger picture.
Their season. Every team that has injuries runs aground. Every team. And the ladder at the end of the year, the injury ladder, reads the same as the AFL Premiership ladder. That's just a fact. You can argue it. You can be disappointed with the performance. You can be disappointed with the effort levels. Like I watch.
Oh, the broken tackles yesterday.
I wouldn't play Motlop again for the year. His refusal to chase when the players are literally around him, I would make a statement, say, you know what, I don't care if we're down to player 33 on our list this week. If you refuse to do what we say are the non-negotiables, then you don't pull on the jumper. The selection piece is your major weapon against standards at your footy club. And if you accept them, still you can challenge them, but you've got to take senior footy off them at some stage.
Robin Avondale, hi, it's Kingy. We can't keep saying there's always next year. We've been saying that for 10 years. We're crying for success. We're crying out for a grand final. Enough is enough. It can't be bad luck every year for 10 years. That's what I'm saying. It just fits into the same old melting pot of angst amongst the Carlton supporters that, again, availability is an issue. But that's the debate, and the debate is for New Vision Clinics. New Vision Clinics, keyhole laser vision, next generation technology. Call 1-800-20-20-20.
There's some anger out there with the Carlton fans.
I love this one, though.
Text machines lit up.
What an overreaction from the Carlton supporters. They've got West Coast and St Kilda in their next two games, which they should win and will push for finals. Such a toxic fan base. And when they win next week, they'll be saying we can make finals now. I wouldn't have thought any Carlton supporter would have thought they're going into that game with any high level of optimism at all. West Coast in Perth.
Mick's just said, you just listed Martin and Fantasia as big outs, and then 1 minute later you say you can't pick Martin and Fantasia. Well, they're there and they're on their list. And this is my point, Mick. They'll end up playing these guys, and you just don't know whether they're going to complete games, complete runs. When was the last time Jack Martin played 6, 8, 10 weeks in a row?
In the run into last season's finals when he had but that's probably it.
That would be it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's been this story all the way along. So if they're on your list, you play them. I mean, we have this discussion all the time. So what do you do with a Dyson Heppel next year at Essendon? If he's there, you're going to play him. Like Sam Mitchell had the same discussion with Jager O'Meara and who was the other one that left? Jager O'Meara and that escapes me. Doesn't matter. If he's there, you play them. If they're there, they get
Mitchell.
Mitchell, exactly. Tommy Mitchell. I thought you were Sam Mitchell. Of course, it's Tom Mitchell. But if they're there, you play them because they're good players and they're better than the guy that you're looking at the next magnet down to bring in. So I just think it's self-explanatory. You can't help bad luck with injury, but you can help by getting the list profile correct.
Does Jared take these sort of liberties?
Have you ran this by Jared?
No. Does he do this?
Good morning.
I want to ask you.
Straightens you up when you hear that.
Who is in the ray gun?
Who is in the ray gun?
Rachel Ray-Gun Gunn, of course. So unless you've been living under a rock, you would know that she's taken the breakdancing in the Olympic world by storm over the weekend. With a fair old before, went instantly viral. So who is in the ray gun when it comes to a football perspective?
I don't know. It's your segment.
All right. I'll throw this. This is Luke Beveridge after the game talking about his star ruckman, Tim English. Tim English's performance in the ruck opposed to Riley O'Brien.
Unstable was a nice word he went with in the end. 20 hit-outs to advantage for Riley O'Brien. 20. I'm not sure I've seen that number. 20 to 3.
That might be worth checking if that sounds like an extreme amount, where that sits all time.
It's a massive
So
number.
this is a coach who's been a ferocious backer.
He's played the Sean Grigg role, Tim English.
Ferocious backer of his players, Kingy. A ferocious backer. And this was almost I don't know if I should mention this or not, this is almost the modern-day version of Blighty and Pittman.
Big pathetic Pitto.
Pathetic Pittman.
Which is, he regrets that comment, Malcolm. That's a bit harsh. 7 goals, 2 to 1 goal, 4 from stoppage. I mean, there's a few things at the Dogs. Buku Karmas goes in the ray gun as well.
Exposed.
Oh man, he looked like a boy against man out there at times. And they've put Lob back so that he doesn't have to take the big bopper. But they just worked him back to the goal square.
Crows worked it beautifully though.
3 talls.
Yeah, but Fogarty, Thilthorpe. I mean, those two, the future's in good hands in that forward 50.
You can't go into a final series with Buku there, I'm sorry. It's going to get exposed against the seriously good teams in a crunch time game.
I thought they'd solve this riddle at the Whitten Oval.
What do you mean?
Well, the key back mix. I thought they'd solve the riddle.
Well, against 3 tall, big-bodied forwards, it's very difficult. He has to play on one of them. It was a thorn in their side all day.
Who was in the ray gun? There you go. Did you watch that performance?
I loved it.
Did you?
I really enjoyed it.
That was pretty good, wasn't it?
Surprised you didn't win a medal.
Just before we move through, they got that right. I really want to talk about Hawthorn. And not only are they getting a lot right at the moment, Kingy, but I reckon I go back to that trade period 9 months ago. They got that right. They brought Jack Ginnivan in, Massimo D'Ambrosio in for a song, obviously. Marby Chol, Jack Gunston on a bargain. And so Chol massive without Mitch Lewis. So he's kicked 32 goals. So he, Ginnivan and Gunston have combined for 77 majors. Massimo D'Ambrosio, speaking of the All-Australian, would have to be on one wing at the moment with Errol Gordon on the other. So I just think back to that trade period was shrewd. They started the season horribly. They've got everything right since then.
1,000,000 for him to be All-Australian. 1,000,000.
Massimo?
Yeah, they won't. They won't.
Oh, I like those odds.
They won't pick two wingmen.
Why not?
I will guarantee.
Why not?
I guarantee you, the All-Australian team will not have two wingmen. You mark my words.
Well, that would be a mistake.
Write it down now. It's a preemptive one. The No Fear Hawks. They don't worry about anything. We talked about them being Showtime a couple of weeks ago, and their forward line just carrying on, taking photos, celebrations, putting on a show. It's built a confidence level that's a good, healthy footy arrogance. I love healthy footy arrogance, and I think you can play at your best when you're like that. So the small forwards are their point of difference. They play at a speed that's hard to curtail. It's hard to clamp. And when they get their overlap handball game going, good luck. I love what we've seen the last couple of weeks. I still think that their midfield is the key to their success, whilst their forward line is their point of difference. The last 6 weeks, their clearance games AFL top 4, their turnover games AFL top 2. There's not a lot missing there. They're in really good health, which is the opposite of what we're talking about with Carlton. So Mitch Lewis is the only one really of any note that's probably not there at the moment. Their defensive numbers are really good. So the last 6 weeks, I think they're top 3 in terms of conceding about 70 points a game. And they're the only team averaging 100 points the last 6 weeks. So it's been a big improvement. They're going to end up with 7 players. I said last night they're going to have 20-plus goals for the year.
Yeah.
7.
They're so even. They're so balanced. So they're on 12 wins at the moment, in the 8 for the first time, obviously, and they've got 2 highly. They're going to finish on 14 wins. Games to come against Richmond and North Melbourne to close. The worst bits for Autoflip, the smarter way to sell your car online. You wanted to talk about goal kicking more generally, but the Western Bulldogs were probably the poster boys for this at the weekend.
Well, we touched on it at AFL 360 last Wednesday, and they're 18th for converting shots between 30 and 50, and they're 18th for converting shots in the corridor. And it all come home to roost again yesterday. Sam Darcy, I don't know where to start with his goal kicking. Brad Johnson's got some work to do there. He kicked 5 points for the day, but from 30 to 50, you should go at about just on 50% or a fraction above from 30 to 50. He kicked 0-4. It wasn't the game. It wasn't the reason they lost, clearly. Because they were out hustled by the Crows, who were frantic for the footy and moved it really well.
But they haven't kicked more goals than behind since round 18, the Dogs. That's a fact. I mean, 9-18, there was, and Bevo mentioned, there's 7 rush there, which makes it look worse than it is. But clearly it's been an issue with that club for a while.
This doesn't count rushed. This is just shots at goals. You either hit, you miss, you hear the goals, points, and then complete mists. So it counts a lot. So they've got to get on top of this before it costs them a final.
Yep. And now
the other thing I want is my man here, Dan's getting stuck into me. All of a sudden, Buku Kamas can't play. I'm not saying he can't play. I'm just saying he's still in the development phase, Buku Kamas, and he may be physically a different specimen after one more preseason. But when you are looking at what will hurt you in a final, which is 2 weeks away, then I think you have to look at this position. Because if they play, we said this chatting here with Ollie, if they played Fremantle in week 1 of the finals, they'd be up against Jackson, Amos and Tracy. So you're going to have the same discussion, the same problem. So why wouldn't you address it now? You don't have to. We're not selecting the team. We're just having a look at what the issues were from the weekend. So we're not having a go at the player and saying he can't play, but right now he's not at a stage where he can compete with the Darcy Fogartys or the Tex Walkers or the Riley Thilthorpes. So why would you roll on with that in the short term?
Yeah, maybe James O'Donnell ends up taking his place in the run home. The worst bits are for Autoflip, where over 1,000 dealers bid to buy your car online, sell easier, quicker, smarter. Just quickly, they got that wrong. Had to be North Melbourne, didn't it? 13 points up with 2 minutes. 2 minutes left, I reckon it was. 7 points with 90 seconds left. Get rolled.
And my man in Wangaratta, well done to the West Coast for knowing what was required, for surging the ball into space, and for Oscar Allen doing what he did. And
a reminder.
And all those sorts of things. And go and watch the replay 100 times. Adam, I think his name was. But the Kangaroos, all they had to do was do what was required in that period, and that's to shut the game down, seek extra stoppages, make sure the ball doesn't leave traffic. They had Josh Simpkins kicking the ball off the ground into space. You got Harry Sheasel punching the ball into space. Just madness.
Yeah.
Like, where's the composure? Like, it's frustrating, Sam, because
the composure comes with the experience, doesn't it, or is that a cop-out?
How many experiences can you have?
Well, what do you mean?
Josh Simpkins played a lot of footy.
Oh, Josh Simpkins has, but then you just mentioned a young fella.
But Jai did it twice in the space of 90 seconds. When the game was requiring another stoppage or some delay, they just couldn't think their way through it. Now, is that a learnt skill from the player? Is that something they should be coached? Is that something they should have learnt during the off season? Is that something they should have learnt in season? It was the West Coast Eagles. It wasn't Collingwood, who have been schooling themselves in this area for 5 years. So I'm really disappointed with that performance all around from the Kangas.
The open question with Adelaide, so where are they? Who are they? Again, this is a bit like the Essendon conversation for me, is where do they go from here? They missed out last season in highly controversial circumstances. There were big hopes this year, and they were disappointing, and now they're coming home with something of a rush. So where are Adelaide? The open question for 2025.
If they didn't get another player in the door, if this was just their lot next year, where would they finish?
Is there enough development there in their younger players to... But then you look at the midfield yesterday and the numbers. So Crouch, 30+. Laird again, high numbers.
Yeah. They're known products, aren't they?
Is it the same old soldiers?
I'd love to see them. I know I keep banging on about this, but have a look at Hinge in there. Have a look at something different. I genuinely... Curtin showed some signs late in game, which was good, but is he going to be a midfielder for them next year? I'm not so sure. So I just want to see someone who's their potential to be a Hayden Young. It may not eventuate, but these sort of 3, 4, 5 weeks when your season's over, effectively, there's no point finding out what Matt Crouch can do. I know what Matt Crouch can do. So yeah, he's going to get footy. He's going to win clearances. But the ceilings. They know the ceiling with those players in the midfield, and they look like a vanilla mid at the start of the year.
So if they attract no one, then what sort of side are they next year? I mean, I love Fogarty and Thilthorpe together as a pairing will only get better. And they've got some promising young defenders as well. Rolly O'Brien's still in his prime in the ruck. It's a hard question to answer, isn't it? It's a really hard question to answer.
Well, it is. So you'd think in the off-season they'd be in for Lukosius. There's another quality ball user at a bare minimum.
It's an open question anyway, so maybe we don't need to provide an answer.
And they start with Rankin in the midfield next year, which he wasn't for the first 4 to 5 weeks.
Are the Geelong Footy Club the curiosity? I know we've spoken about them a bit, just quietly going about their business. The side that never bottoms out, lost 6 or 7 mid-years, just quietly snuck into the top 4. And they've done it with little fanfare, I think. So Paddy Dangerfield looks brilliant again. He had 11 clearances against Fremantle. I think 6 centre bounce clearances. He slaughtered them. He looks dynamic. They look dynamic. And they are a danger. They are always a danger. And Jeremy Cameron at the peak of his powers once again.
They're back to being the best the last 6 weeks without the footy. And I keep coming back to that with a few measures we track. If you're hard to play against, if you're hard to score against, hard to move the ball against, you're in every game. And that is the finals integrity that you need. That they set up with that the prime focus, and then everything else builds from there. So their ability, Dangerfield has a massive influence on this midfield, as we all know. He's a top liner. We didn't think he'd be able to come back and do this. I mean, no, Joey showed some vision last night. He's had 20 clearances in 2 weeks. Like, no one expected Patrick to be this.
And every time he gets it, you're just thinking, will the hammies remain intact? So it's just a fingers crossed scenario for him from here until the end.
Truth be told, I had some vision to show on Thursday night on the preview crack of him lunging and going at speed a couple of times last week. And I was going to say, didn't he say he wasn't going to do this?
He can't change.
He can't change. And you see him on the weekend, you go, I sort of thought, I'm glad I didn't show that vision because he's done it again.
Who have you got at 4? We start at 4, do we not?
We start at 4.
Okay.
And it gets worse from there. I'm not confident with any of these, okay? And if you're tracking these like the boys at the back are.
Hope they're not.
They have swung wildly the last few weeks.
Hope no one's been listening.
At 4, I got the Cats because I just think they're the most bankable of the teams that I'm not sure about.
I think that's a solid enough pick.
So, well coached, well drilled, in reasonable health, and got star factor players that perform every week.
Now, I've only been doing this for a few weeks, but I've been waiting to put this team into 4th.
Oh, you haven't.
Finally, I can because they are now eligible. They are Hawthorn. They're in the 8 and they're in the Seedings. They are my number 4.
Number 4.
4.
3 for me. I've gone the Sydney Swans. I'm still maintaining the
3.
Yeah.
That's a fair way back.
No, well, it could have been
Didn't
worse.
you like what you saw?
Well, I didn't love it. It was okay. Warner and Heaney went crazy and to get them over the line.
The switch has been flicked now.
A switch?
Yes.
Really? Okay, I'm not sure about the switch. I'm just thinking 2 players said, no, we're going to get this. We're going to win this game for you.
Okay.
Who got a 3?
GWS with some guns to return. They are flying. We devoted a large portion of the means test to the Giants. I think they are the real McCoy.
They're a 2 for me. I think they're brilliantly coached with just an anger. There's an anger about this team now that's palpable. I love their want to force their game onto you. That'll take them a long way. They're a 2 for me.
I think Collingwood were playing some really good footy. That's why I'm paying a lot of attention to Sydney's performance. I think this was the circuit breaker they needed, the sign they needed, and what they can build on. So I've got the Swans at 2.
Need a little bit of umpire interjection to help them get over the line. I still think Brisbane are the best placed team to win it.
Same.
Seriously healthy. Just need to get themselves back into the fore. It was a loss they didn't need to have, but the last 3 months have been brilliant.
No, they were going for 10 in a row, so they remain my number 1 seed as well, Kingy. So they will be all up and put up on the
One thing's
side.
for sure, they'll change again next week.